today we are joined by William Elsley. William works for NIBSC, and I'll hand over to you, William. So what we want to know is who you are and what you do, firstly.
Hi. Okay, hello everybody. As Vanessa said there, my name is William Elsley. I work at NIBSC, and NIBSC stands for the National Institute of Biological Standards and Controls, and that's why we all call it NIBSC. My role there was a scientist, so basically that meant that I helped out with some of the research around the development and testing of some of the vaccines that are produced. And the last one I worked on was the HPV vaccine, which I'm sure some of the girls, if they're at secondary school, will get, and maybe some of the boys going forward as well. And I loved doing this work. Part of it was just the challenge every day of coming in, and you never quite knew what you were going to end up doing. That was part of the fun.
So one of my next questions, William, was what do you do on like an average day?
Well, one of the great things about science, and one of the things I liked about it, is there really isn't much of an average day. Everything's different. You did have some techniques that you use over and over again, but often you tend to find that everything changes quite quickly because we find new things out all the time. And that's one of the great things I liked about it. But the sort of thing that you were always prepared for is you'd go in, you'd have a lot of, you'd have a lot of work to do in the laboratory, which again, I liked because it means you're on your feet, you're doing things, you're going from one place to another. You're not sitting behind a desk, which I always hated the idea of. My father was an accountant and I never wanted to do that. I wanted to be somewhere where I could move around. One of the things I liked was the fact you don't have to get dressed up in a suit every day. You can just wear everyday clothes. And I really enjoyed that.
When you were at school, what did you want to be when you left school?
Very early on, I wanted to be a fireman just because I like the big red flashing fire engine, but that quickly shifted. The next job I wanted to do, I thought would be a teacher because they had great long holidays. I thought that'd be great. But I must admit, very early on, even at primary school, I started getting interested in biology, and I found very quickly that we had a river at the bottom of our road, and I loved going down there and catching fish and then leeches, and then we found water scorpions and all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And later on, my parents bought me a microscope, and I started looking under the microscope at what was in the river, and I just couldn't get over how much was down there. And it's very easy to get. I found it very exciting seeing all the different types of animals that were alive and living in just water at the bottom of your road. It was incredible, and that just blossomed. And I got to secondary school, and I did biology, and I did, on the whole, enjoy all of the biology. I also quite like maths, which fitted quite well in with the biology as far as the science was concerned. And I did struggle with my results at school. I didn't do very well. I think I thought I was working really hard, but I didn't understand that you couldn't revise in front of a television. I thought that was perfectly okay. I managed to scrape through and get into college to do a degree in applied biology. And then I started to mature and get a bit better at doing exams. And I got through my degree course. I got a 2-1, which was pretty good. That's the second highest you can get after a first. And I got a job doing some research into chlamydia, which is a sexually transmitted disease which affects millions of people. It's the biggest cause of preventable blindness in the world. In first world countries where you can get treatment, you can get antibiotics that can cure chlamydia, but unfortunately in some of the third world countries in places like Africa, the disease can cause blindness. And then of course you have a population that is highly affected and disadvantaged because they can't see anything. So I was very interested in that. We were trying to develop a vaccine for that. And then I moved across after a few years and started working on HIV, which is one of the areas that I've worked on for most of my life. And I really enjoyed that. There's been a lot of headway made, and we made some interesting discoveries along the way, but there is still no vaccine for HIV. It is a very well adapted virus, and it is a very difficult to treat virus. So
have you had have NIBSC been working on the COVID virus at all?
We have. The very department I'm in, we do a lot of work on the COVID-19 virus. I'm trying to think of the best ways to describe it. The one thing that we do that you probably have heard about, all the vaccines that are released in this country, we are the people who test them to make sure they are safe for the general public. So when you hear that that we've released the vaccine. Some of my colleagues have been working very long hours. Some of them have been doing 15-hour days to make sure that vaccine gets released for the use in the general public. And I know they are still doing some very long hours now. So yes, that's part of what we do at NIBS.
Okay, great. So I think actually most of my questions, they've kind of rolled into each other and you have mostly answered them. So what subjects did you enjoy at school and why? Obviously it was biology, and because you enjoyed,
I loved biology. Yes, I absolutely enjoyed that.
Creatures at the bottom of the river. I can imagine my son's rummaging around in rivers at the bottom of the garden. So if a student watching this today wanted to follow your kind of career path, what would you advise them to do?
I think what you want to do, if you want to get into biology, you need to have a good science base. So you need to concentrate on sort of biology, maths, chemistry. Those are the main three. You need to have a good writing skills. But I'd say the main thing is, as I said, I didn't do very well at school. I mean, I did okay, but I didn't do brilliantly. I got 2 E's in my A levels the first time round. I had to retake some. And a lot of that, as I said, was because I didn't really understand what you needed to do well in exams. But I didn't ever give up. I just kept going, and I applied to lots of different places. And finally, one of the places I applied to said, well, if you get I redid my chemistry O level because I'd failed that the first time round. That's the GCSE now. And one of the colleges I applied to said, well, as long as you get a pass in your chemistry O level, we'll let you into the university. And I did, so I got in. They were very aware of the fact that my chemistry was quite lacking. So they said to me, look, you may need some extra lessons. But in actual fact, I found that I picked it up quite quickly, and it was a lot easier than perhaps they thought it was going to be for me. And I didn't really have any problems at all once I got to university. I think the teaching mechanism was very different at university. I mean, a lot of people say, a lot of my friends say, and I agree, university is so much more fun than school because you tend to be doing much more about what you want to do. Yeah. And the structure is very different. It's much looser. The only thing I would say is you do need to be motivated if you go to university, because generally speaking, they don't tend to push you. They rely on the fact that you will motivate yourself. Now, I really wanted to do it, and I had a great time, so it was fun. But if you think that it's going to be like school, it's not like school at all. But I would thoroughly recommend university people. I had a great time at university, and I'm talking about the course. I'm not talking about all the activities around the side, which were all as well.
That's great. Thank you ever so much. So any final words?
I would just say, yeah, I mean, I think one of the most difficult things, my father used to say this to me, is deciding what you want to do. Now, that's never easy. But if you think you like a subject, it doesn't have to be biology, but if you really like a subject, physics or maths, because the great thing about doing that is you'll end up doing something that interests you, and it's far better to do a job that you're interested in rather than end up in something that you're just doing because you get a paycheck at the end of the week or at the end of the month. So do something you like. I always wanted to do biology, and it worked out very well for me in that respect. There are always going to be days where you're going to think, oh, I don't want to do this, but there are also days where you think, oh, that was fantastic. So it's good to be in an area that you want to do, and that would be the best advice. Do what you want to do as a job. You're going to be doing it for a long time, so think about that.
That's great. Thank you ever so much, William, and thank you everyone for watching. If anyone has any questions at all, then feel free to email them in to us and we will pass them on for you. Thank you.